Well, great. Thank you all for being here and for introducing yourselves. I'm glad to see that there is rain all over the state. It's very nice to see water coming from the sky. My plants are very happy. So welcome to all of you. We're really glad you're here. Before we get started, just a couple pieces of housekeeping. The meeting is being recorded. And if you have any questions today, we ask you to submit them through the Q&A button. And you can use the chat to talk to each other. And also, if you're having any technical issues, use the chat feature, but we'll be pulling questions from the Q&A. So use that whenever you have a question for us. So for those of you that don't know me, hello, my name is Jennifer Norris. I'm the Deputy Secretary for Biodiversity and Habitat at the California Natural Resources Agency. And I have the great honor of leading the state's 30 by 30 initiative, which is our commitment to conserve 30% of California's lands and coastal waters by 2030. You can learn more about this initiative by visiting our website and downloading our Pathways to 30 by 30 strategy, or watching the plenary session from our 30 by 30 partnership kickoff event, which was in September. And links to those are being added to the chat now. On September 28th, we hosted an event to kick off the 30 by 30 partnership at the California Natural Resources Building. And this event was amazing. We had several hundred partners from all over the state come together to share information, make connections. And as a key part of that, we hosted what we called a community expo, or a 30 by 30 partnership expo, where folks with funding, technical assistance, opportunities to partner, each had a table, and we had all of our folks walking around, talking, learning more about all these different programs. And unfortunately, or fortunately, the event was filled to capacity. We actually had to turn people away. And we also know that some people just weren't able to travel to be in person. So that's what today is. We're actually hosting this virtual Expo series to bring some of that experience to everyone else. So today I'm very excited to be joined by Dick Cameron from the California Biodiversity Network and Neil Matuka from the Office of Planning and Research, Fifth Climate Assessment. And both Dick and Neil are going to give an introduction about their programs, any funding they have available, or other resources that will help us advance 30 by 30. And then we'll spend some time addressing questions from you. And my team will also try to answer any questions in the chat, or I'm sorry, in the Q&A as they come in. But let's get underway. We have a lot to talk about. I'm going to turn it first over to Dick to give us an overview of the Biodiversity Network. Welcome, Dick. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Appreciate it. Jason, if you could pull up those slides. My name is Dick Cameron, and I'm on the steering committee of the California Biodiversity Network. And I'm also the Director of Science for Climate Programs here at the Nature Conservancy in California. And I'm excited to be here. I appreciate the invitation, and I look forward to engaging in conversation with you all. CBN is pretty new. We are an all-volunteer organization that's not even incorporated as a 501c3, but just sort of a loose professional organization that started up about a year and a half ago, I guess. And we are a key partner to, you can advance to the next slide, a key partner to the 30 by 30 partnership. And so we're represented there on this slide, on the figure there on the left is the red circle, and I've highlighted our sort of priority roundtables that make up the organization there in the Venn diagram on the right. But essentially, we're serving as a convening body across sectors for agency representatives, tribal representatives, NGO communities, academic institutions, to basically improve the collaboration and sharing of information across sectors and across disciplines to accelerate 30 by 30 implementation, provide a strong science basis for 30 by 30 as well. And I'll get more into what our roundtables are, but we also have a cross-cutting equity forum that it seeks to basically integrate all sorts of aspects related to equity and environmental justice into our programs as well. And we're led by a steering committee that is, again, all volunteer. and really trying to provide that collaborative forum for discussing best approaches for things like biodiversity protection planning, stewardship, environmental education, and scientific research. Next slide. So we do have a website. I think it was dropped into the chat, so go check it out. There's some resources on there that describes our roundtables in more detail, some overall principles and collaborative goals that we seek to advance. And we're also open to organizational members. So there's sort of a charter, if you will, of shared principles that we're accepting organizational members throughout the state. We have over 100 members.
Did Dick freeze or did I freeze?
I think it may have been him, actually.
Oh no. For a minute, I thought it was mine. Well, darn it. Maybe let's hit pause on Dick's presentation and switch over to the next one. We'll get Neil up and then we'll bring Dick back. I'll send him a text. Good thing we're casual here at the virtual expo, and Neil's ready. All right, I'll get him back on. Neil, take it away. Thank you for being ready.
Of course. Thank you. Well, thanks for having us. And as I mentioned, my name is Neil Matuka. I am the program manager for California's 5th Climate Change Assessment at the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. And I work in the Integrated Climate Adaptation and Resiliency Program, or ICARP. ICARP drives California's response to climate impacts, prioritizing equitable approaches that integrate mitigation and adaptation. And we're here to talk about the 5th assessment. With the passage of Senate Bill 1320, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research is the interagency coordinator of the 5th assessment in partnership with the California Natural Resources Agency, California Energy Commission, and California Strategic Growth Council. We have a dedicated team to oversee the administration and rollout of the 5th assessment and have funding to support the development of an extensive suite of cutting-edge research on climate change. The 5th assessment is a 5-year process ending in June of 2026. And you can see our overall timeline for the assessment on your screen. Kind of briefly going through the different products, because this is what you're all here to find out more about. First, we have the Energy Commission leading the production of downscaled climate change projections and data. This will include climate scenarios such as wildfire and hydrologic modeling. The Energy Commission is also leading the development of original climate research focused on the energy sector. This will be available primarily through their EPIC solicitations, one of which is already underway, and hopefully another will be available at some point in the future. OPR is also working with the Natural Resources Agency to produce original climate research that is not covered by the Energy Commission's EPIC solicitation. So this will be on your screen is the core technical reports non-energy. We're anticipating that this will hopefully be released early next year. And building on lessons learned from the 4th assessment, the 5th assessment is standing up our first ever tribal research program. We will be prioritizing early, often, and meaningful consultation with California Native American tribes. The synthesis of the climate projections data and original climate research will culminate in a series of reports that will call attention to broad climate issues across the state. For our defining statute, this will include a tribal report and a report on environmental justice. However, we intend to support additional topics based on the feedback that we have received and that we plan to receive in the coming months. We will also be developing regionally specific information to help guide communities in responding to the impacts of climate change that affect their particular area. And finally, a statewide summary report will be developed to highlight major findings and lessons learned throughout the assessment. As I mentioned, we're very lucky to have the first ever tribal research program in the assessment under the 5th assessment. where we will be prioritizing this consultation with California Native American tribes and working with them to make sure that there is tribally led research and this consultation and incorporation is done in a respectful and meaningful fashion. This is being led by my colleague, Patricia Kennedy, who's the Tribal Research Program Manager, and we'll focus on consultation with tribes and consideration of tribal expertise and traditional knowledges into the fifth assessment products. Included in this program are a tribal advisory group comprised of representatives from California tribes to guide the tribal research program, providing advice through the 4 years on topics such as ensuring research priorities are meaningful and beneficial to California tribes. A tribal grant program co-managed by the Energy Commission, which will support tribal participation, capacity, and encourage tribally led research in the fifth assessment. Consideration of tribal knowledges and tribal expertise into fifth assessment reports where meaningful for tribes and culturally appropriate. A tribal synthesis report similar to the fourth assessment tribal and indigenous report that will assess climate impacts to tribal communities statewide, and potential consideration into regional reports where appropriate. We will also be having 3 upcoming webinars, one on the 16th for
Not again. Did Neil freeze or did I freeze?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, you froze for a second.
Oh,
I don't trust my internet now. Maybe it's the storm.
I'm
Sorry.
yeah.
You're good. You were saying webinars. Go for it.
Unstable.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a research process webinar on the 16th, and then the 9th and the 15th we'll have 2 tribal workshops specifically geared towards the tribal grant program.
And that research process, all those, will the people be able to get more information about how they can actually apply in those webinars? Is that their purpose, or what the kinds of things you're looking for, or what?
We don't have information about applying yet because we're not ready, but there will be more information about when you should anticipate
Great.
Those being available.
And the kinds of things you're hoping to get information on, I hope. Yeah, perfect. Okay, thanks. Oh, that's it. Awesome. All right, let's bring Dick back. I think he's back on. It wasn't just you. It's the storm. We should be grateful for the rain.
Okay. Yes, I thought it was my Zoom
it might have been
needing to update or something, but it just rebooted. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry, Neil, for just putting you on the spot and then coming back as a loud participant.
He was ready.
Anyway, we'll try this again. So check out our website, California Biodiversity Network. I believe it's in the chat. It'll give you a better sense of who we are, kind of what our goals are, and give you a chance to potentially join as an organizational member, looking at our shared principles. You can also sign up for our mailing list, and also tell us what roundtables you're interested in joining, because we have a database where we're just tracking interest, and if you're interested in stewardship or planning, we can put you on those roundtable email lists and make sure that you're up to date on what we're up to. Next slide. All right. So one of the things that we focused on early, so I mentioned we've been around maybe a year and a half or so. We also were fortunate enough to be able to contribute an appendix to the official 30 by 30 Pathways document led by CNRA and that came out this spring. And you'll see in Appendix D, which is sort of the one that we co-authored with our input from our members, really focused on science and research gaps and priorities, thinking through from the perspective of our roundtables, what types of information, what types of collaborations might be helpful in accelerating 30 by 30 implementation and putting it on the strongest, foundation for implementation going forward. There's also, again, as I mentioned, we have these 4 roundtables, and the Equity Forum, again, is a cross-cutting convening that's essentially providing input and providing resources in terms of different types of research gaps related to incorporating equity into conservation and restoration. Next slide. We're very fortunate to just get word that we are going to actually receive some funding from the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation to advance the work of our roundtables and shore up some of the organizational backbone of CBN. So we're thrilled about that and really excited about that. And these bullets for these for the roundtables and the Equity Forum speak to some of the funded work that we're going to be kicking off in the coming months. So one focus of the Equity Forum is to look at the potential to incorporate Indigenous ecological knowledge into models of co-stewardship for natural resources. Our stewardship roundtable is going to be really focused on workforce training, educational needs, community-centered stewardship needed to advance climate-adapted and biodiversity-centric land management, adhering to the principles of ecocultural equality, restoration, and focusing on regenerative ecosystems as well. Our systematic conservation planning roundtable is going to be looking at how we can incorporate working lands, private conservation lands, and other managed lands into a 30 by 30 framework, taking stock of what's been done internationally. So this is sort of a common theme internationally around how to include non-protected areas in 30 by 30 progress. And then continuing to advance and promote and highlight regional conservation planning that's relevant for 30 by 30. Next slide. Two more roundtables. Our Sentinel site is really focused on climate biodiversity monitoring. So they're going to be developing and testing a set of climate biodiversity indicators in support of an integrated monitoring network across different jurisdictions. And then finally, our informatics and community science roundtable will be focused on how to bring in things like museum data and community science data into the CA Nature platform and into the conservation planning tools available for 30 by 30. Next slide. I think that's all I have. So just encourage everyone to get involved. Go check out our website, join a roundtable, sign on as an organizational member, and at a minimum, sign up for our email list for the different roundtables. All right. Thanks so much.
Is that a dinosaur in the middle of your QR code?
It is. Yeah,
that's
what Chrome does.
So thank you so much. Let's bring Neil back. I just want to say, first of all, how much I love these virtual expos, because I get to think more deeply about the different ways that our partnership is functioning. And I first want to just thank the Biodiversity Network. It's true, you're all volunteers, and you did pull together this incredible appendix that it really goes through all the different ways that, you know, we can be thinking about the questions around 30 by 30 and what those science needs really are. And the value of the network is that, you know, it is open. These conversations are open and inclusive, and with the intention of really sort of just bringing information together. It's not designed to sort of have people jockey for position, but to just information to the state. And Neil, that makes me think about you. I mean, similarly, you're thinking about, you know, how do we figure out what the big science needs are and get those gaps filled, right? So we can do a better job of meeting our climate agenda. So maybe this question's for you, Neil. How do you figure out how do you boil down that ocean, right? There's a million questions that we want to get answers to. How do you figure out what are the most important ones for your team?
Yeah, that's a great question and very relevant. You'll in fact be getting an email about that in the next couple of days.
Okay.
To participate. The approach that we took was that we started by just asking everyone. We've spent the last couple of months trying to answer that question. So we started with a series of surveys. We surveyed state agencies. Where are the gaps in their work? Where are the gaps that they're saying that they don't do work? And we asked the same question of the public and experts outside of the state. Ended up with over 600 topics that were proposed. You know, many of those were the same because folks couldn't see what other people were submitting. But then boiled that down to about 180 research gaps. We held a series of 6 roundtables with an expert panel discussion in the month of October, or the beginning of October and September, and tried to identify which ones are most pressing. Because you're right, there's too many questions, there's too many knowledge gaps, we can't answer all of them. And even with the generous funding that you know, the legislature has provided us for the 5th assessment, we can't fund them all.
Yeah.
So we really had to focus, you know, ask people, but which are your top priorities? How do we, you know, if we only have a limited budget, which one should we answer first? And so we've been able to boil that down to a shorter list. We're under 30 topics now, still going through the review process on that, and hoping to be able to make them, they'll be fairly broad, because we also are going to incorporate those into our the RFP for our core science research. And we want to make sure that we're not overly prescriptive for researchers, to give them the flexibility to answer questions that are really meaningful.
So this is a completely self-serving question, but where does nature fit in the whole rubric, and especially conservation and biodiversity? I'm really hoping they floated somewhere to the top there, Neil.
Absolutely. I mean, to be honest, when we got our initial list of topics, it was extraordinarily nature heavy. You know, I think partly because of the adaptation strategy and much of the work that's been going on 30 by 30, there are a lot of questions there.
Mm-hmm.
And so asking a lot of questions results in a lot of research gaps. You know, so that's definitely going to make a strong showing in our list. You know, partly also because a lot of our sister agencies have very strong research arms that answer a lot of the other questions.
Awesome. And I hope you saw today the White House delivered a report on nature-based solutions for climate change and a suite of tools that the federal government is going to provide in that space. I thought that was nice, a nice thing. So Dick, I'm seeing questions, and this is one of mine too. So how do people sign up for the roundtables? That's different from joining as a member organization necessarily. And is it only academic institutions, or can anyone participate?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so yeah, definitely not academic institutions. It could be land trusts, NGOs. We have private consultants. We have Native American tribal representatives. So there's a whole range, even just interested citizens, frankly. There's a link, and I can drop it into the chat if folks haven't done that before me. Where
I think Jason just
did.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, great. Yeah, you can go onto our website, and basically there's a Google form where you enter your information, your name, your address, and then you can just click for which roundtables you want to hear from. Some of them, I will say, some are more organized than others and meet more regularly and have sort of a defined membership. Obviously, they're all open to new members, whereas others have been more informal sort of convenings and webinar kind of convenings for information sharing. So, but that's the way to do it. Yep.
So how much is the Biodiversity Network, I'm going to put you two together, thinking about climate change, and how does that shake out in your research gaps?
I mean, it's certainly cross-cutting. You can't really think about persistence of biodiversity without the rates of change and the types of changes and the types of events that come with climate change. And so it's sort of weaved in through, frankly, all of the roundtables in the Equity Forum, if you'll see in that Appendix D. And, you know, particularly with stewardship, you know, take, for example, the ways that we've done stewardship in the past, both on public land and on private land, is within the context of rates of change and rates of, you know, extreme climatic events that we experienced in the past. And those are changing and becoming non-analog and becoming outside the bounds of what we would expect. And so holding up a focus on adaptive management, on using, you know, for example, the information gleaned from the Sentinel sites, which again is this network of climate biodiversity indicators to inform stewardship. So we're really trying to pull together as much as possible the goals and the content across those roundtables.
That's awesome. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the pieces that I'm excited about is this bringing community science into our larger network of data, finding ways to really democratize people gathering data and finding ways to bring that into I love that because it builds the movement.
Yeah, very much so. Yep.
So Neil, I'm going to ask you just more of a higher level question about the Fifth Climate Assessment. How do people use this assessment when it's done? Where does it go? I know it doesn't sit on a shelf, but how do people use it? What are the different ways?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I guess it depends on which portion of the assessment we're talking about and which audiences. You know, the CalAdapt website is part of the fifth assessment, the visualizations of different scenarios and modeling outcomes, as well as the data that's behind that. We see that data present in a lot of research because it's some of the best California-specific climate data that you can get. We're encouraging other state agencies to use that as well, because there's a lot of conflicting data out there.
So shout out for CA Nature, just while I'm going to interrupt you. We used some information from CalAdapt in our 30 by 30 database for that reason, right? Trying to project future climate scenarios and where our conservation lands are and how they sync up with biodiversity. So maybe if anybody on this call hasn't checked out our GIS, you should do that too. So sorry to interrupt you, Neil. We're using it.
Of course.
There you go.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
We love to hear that. A lot of the other products, there's a suite under the fourth assessment. There was a suite of research that was contracted out that relied on that data. A lot of it relied on that data because now you have new information, and we want to see what that means for the research that's specific to California. And that goes through the peer review process, which is important to us because a lot of state agencies want to make sure that the research that they're using has been peer reviewed and is the best available science. So we're trying to make sure that we are providing other agencies and other organizations and local governments and activists and NGOs and everyone who wants to take action that they have the right data, they have the right information, they have research that they can rely on. I think most folks think about the big summary report that we have at the end as the assessment, and that's a really good way for folks to get a handle on it at a high level. Brings in all the different impacts. It talks about how impacts vary by geographic regions across the state. So that's really helpful, especially for folks who don't really haven't really historically participated in say adaptation or future impacts of climate change. And then the big piece that we're really focusing on this time around is how do we make sure that our regional reports are really helpful, that they have the right audiences in mind, and that it walks up to what is your goal with getting this information and how can we help you get there.
Wow, I'm just going to say it sounds like a huge task. Do you have 1,000 people helping you write it?
Sometimes it feels like that. We do have a very, very, very great dedicated team this time around, which is a huge change from last time. Ton of amazing volunteers in the fourth assessment, and just gobs of help. Everyone is really excited to participate and has been really generous with their time and their efforts so far, and we're definitely going to continue to rely on that moving forward.
Awesome. Well, you can rely on us for sure. So I told you this would go fast. Thank you both for your time. I'm so grateful, and for everyone for sending in questions. For anything that you had outstanding questions about, just fundamentals of 30 by 30, again, I encourage you to check out our California Nature website. We're going to be building out the FAQ and resources page so that more information is available there. I want to just let you know that this video will be posted also on that website, along with all the other videos in the series. I want to encourage you to join us for one of our upcoming webinars. I think we have a slide on that, maybe, unless I froze. Nope. And we also have, we've just added 2 new events at the end of November, early December, to make sure that we get all of the partners from the Expo series to give us their little half an hour. So thank you all for your time today. I'm really grateful again for Dick and Neil for giving us this time and for the great work that you're doing. And go 30 by 30, go 30 by 30 partnership. Enjoy the rain. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.